Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Insight into Wellness. My name is Alexandra Greenberg, and I am the owner of GreenTree Ayurveda. And today we're talking healing through sound and listening with Calvin Pia. Uh, we're really going to get into the creation is vibration, and we'll explore the ways sound can bring us into deeper harmony with ourselves and the world around us. A little bit about Calvin. He is a sound designer, composer, and sound healer based here in Portland, Oregon. His journey has been long and winding, from touring with the band Snowmine to becoming lead mixer at the NYC Sound Studio 1000 Birds to opening a healing sanctuary called Being Space here in Portland. Calvin has been dedicating much of his time and energy to sound healing, the use of sound to promote states of deep relaxation through ancient healing instruments. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Alex. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited because not only have we we haven't really talked about this, but we've been friends for a little bit of time, although COVID has taken us away.
Right.
We're finding our paths are coming back together again, and I'm excited to talk about sound healing with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm so glad. Yeah, I mean, ever since you cut my hair and we've been friends ever since, and now doing a podcast. Love it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I always like to start the podcast or start this time together just learning a little bit more about you. And I think it's so interesting asking healers, when did the healing begin in your life? When did that connection to your well-being start? Was this something in your childhood, or did this manifest much later?
Mm.
Invite us in.
So yeah, my history with sound has been uh long and interesting. I my first words were actually sounds mimicking basically the environment around me as a baby. So I was just always tuned in and listening really deeply. To, cars going by or the brakes on a bus or like birds chirping and stuff like that. And so I feel like I was already kind of like tuning to the world around me from an early age. And I was always much more of a listener, kind of sucking my thumb and just listening. Little Buddha baby, as my mom would say. And so that kind of like that personality, I came in with that kind of engagement with the world, sort of an open kind of receptivity. And that carried into teenage years. I was in like rock bands and like tons, like even metal bands, and just crazy exploration of just kind of the opposite energy, but just sort of like getting it all out through sound. I feel like sound was my vehicle for expression and sort of a way of emoting and understanding everything, so or trying to. And yeah, that teenage energy, it was just like, yeah, metal bands, rock bands, indie bands and stuff like that. And so I was just exploring and being creative, and that felt really therapeutic, to play really loud music, feel that bass in my body. Whether I knew it was doing that or not, it was all intuitive. It was all just an emotional kind of reaction, and it felt great. So that evolved into music taking me, around the country and touring with Snowmine and playing with all sorts of different bands. And that was fun, but it got a little tiring because I feel like music industry can get a little heady and ego-y. And I think it kind of lost its spark for me for a little while.
Mhm.
Settled into sound design position at 1000 Birds, which was really well suited to my kind of desires, where sort of like music was a little bit more on the back burner at this moment, and I was able to kind of think of sound in a much more broad sense. And it was really kind of eye-opening to think of sounds back to kind of my roots, where I was able to like think of ambiances and textures and tones and things that kind of can paint a scene and bring us into a story. When I'm doing sound design for films, for example, it's sort of thinking about every layer, the anatomy of a scene, the soundscape. So I think my kind of attention, I guess, to sound,
Mhm.
to kind of the environment has always really been, whether I knew it was a spiritual kind of leaning or not, early on, I didn't know it to be that. But I feel like as I've gotten older, and gotten more into meditation and yoga, and sound healing, there's just been kind of an obvious link that was just made more recently. So I feel like that kind of brings us to the present day, where I think of sound in so many ways. But yeah, so that's kind of my healing journey. So I see it now as a very healing practice. Yeah,
Well, yeah, it's always lovely. I mean, this doesn't happen for everyone, for all of us, but it's always lovely to kind of see that arc and that kind of come full circle moment where you're like, oh, this is bringing me back to my most basic me, um, when you were a child.
totally. Yeah,
When did the art of sound healing come through? And can you just really explain for us what that means for you and how you work with sound healing?
totally. Yeah, so sound healing kind of came in more, I guess, more recently in the last like probably 5 years. It's well, I was inspired by my friends Pamela Martinez and Alex Beckman, who would hold sound healings in Brooklyn, in Manhattan, and which is where I lived for 15 years before I moved to Portland. And yeah, and sort of, I feel like in the last decade or so, it's sort of like been drawn to kind of sounds like ambient music has just been like so big for me in terms of just like I just don't sometimes I just haven't wanted to hear music that demands too much of my attention and can kind of stress me out more than the world already kind of has
Presents
yeah,
itself with,
presents
yeah.
itself. I don't know if that's my 30s or just the last few years have just been extra crazy, but yeah, so sort of like drawn to ambient music, drawn to sound healing, and things that kind of bring us into a meditative state. And I just knew intuitively what did that, but as I dug into it more, I really discovered that sound healing is extremely powerful science and art. Yeah, what's going on there is I mean, there's so many layers to it. I don't know if you want me to get into the kind of science and spirituality of it. But yeah, essentially, like there's like there's the emotional connect, what do you call it? Like connection that we have to sounds and music. So, when you hear a sound or you hear a song, there's like the kind of emotional reaction. And a lot of that has to do with an experience maybe that we've had. So that's the kind of intuitive sort of powerful thing that I think, interaction with music that I think most of us have in life. And sort of like a song can bring us to tears or
Hmm.
up or whatever. So there's that is just extremely powerful and intuitive. And then on a biological level, there's the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body, and it's connected to our eardrum. So when sounds are played in such a way, we stimulate the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve is the main like influencer of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our essentially rest and regenerative kind of energy, but opposite of fight or flight. So it's really that calming energy, and it really can, and that promotes healing in and of itself naturally. So the body heals itself through sound. So that's pretty incredible. It basically regulates all of our autonomic senses. So there's, like, or autonomic systems like circulatory or, or breathing or digestion and all of that. It can calm all of that and kind of get us into basically our natural hum.
Yeah.
And
There's
yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
okay. Yeah, and and with that, there's like the hum of, there's this general idea of like our body as an orchestra. So like everything is all creation is sound and vibration. And we kind of know this intuitively too, where, like a glass, if we clink it, it has a sound, it has a tone. Piece of wood has a tone. Instruments are more obvious with that, but like uh, our bodies are no different, and our bodies are made of 70% water. So there's, and if you've ever seen, yeah, like cymatics shows that, when tones are played to water, you can actually see patterns play out essentially.
Hmm.
So our bodies really have their own natural state of in which we're the most in flow. And when we're stagnant, and when there's energy stagnating from, stress or anxiety or lack of sleep or any of that stuff, it literally causes dis-ease. And there's ways that we can actually move that energy with sound. I mean, you can literally play tones to your body, and it can actually like kind of like right itself. So it's operating on all those levels, physical, emotional, spiritual, all of that. Oh,
Yeah.
and the spiritual element too is interesting too, because it's like the intention behind a sound is a whole other thing that I think we don't think about a lot.
Hmm.
Like when a sound is played or sung, or you can think of it like when you hear a song, you can kind of tell what the person's going for, whether they're like going for attention or they're going for this kind of thing, or they're trying to create a certain emotion, and it really can be very powerful. And so I think the wonderful thing about sound healing is that like the whole idea is the sounds that are being played with the intention of healing and really sending that out to the person. And it's kind of rare, if you think about it, that sounds are really intended for specifically just that. So I think it's a beautiful part of the process.
Yeah. Well, the intention of the practitioner, the intention of the sound. I think, you know, it's important for us to really consider all of those levels when we're really thinking about stepping into life in a really healing manner. Anything could truly be healing, especially when we know how important it is to go out in nature and the sound of, I mean, here in Oregon, there's waterfalls everywhere. And so standing by a waterfall and hearing that sound and knowing that down to our very cell, each cell is making a sound. And so when you talk about stagnant energy, it's those cells not really being able to communicate correctly with each other. And then this music comes in, this vibration, this influence, and that can, like you mentioned, really help to correct and balance dis-ease. So it's just fantastic
Mhm.
and fantastical just to even think of that. um
Yeah, it's magical. There's so much that's going on that
mhm,
we don't even really realize, and it feels so primal too. I feel like we are animals, and we have it's just millennia of a kind of like, yeah, primal kind of connections with vibration. Our bodies, who knows what we have a deep sense of knowing there, and there's like a whole world that our mind can't even potentially comprehend. And so it's beautiful to just kind of succumb to it and get curious about it.
yeah, letting go of the thinking mind and really being able to dive into not exactly, well, when I say letting go of the thinking mind, it's almost like letting go of the emotional aspect and really sinking into this energetic space. I think we a lot of the times get blocked by our emotions, whether they're good or bad. So, kind of stepping aside from that and really just letting the body do the work. We think we're so smart, but our body is so much more intelligent, and letting the body really do the work.
Totally.
So let's kind of step into what a class is like. I myself have just taken one class, which is crazy because it's so in alignment with things that I talk about and love and want to be a part of.
Mm.
And I will say that it wasn't the most. I don't know. I left that class not feeling, which is so funny, not feeling happy in these emotions, not feeling like, oh, I thought I'm supposed to feel a certain way afterwards. And later I learned that when energy is moving around the body, energy can actually make you nauseous, make you a little sickly or something like that. Um, that was
Mm.
just my experience. And yeah, tell us a little bit about like what is happening when we go to those classes and kind of walk us through what a class is like or a moment or an experience.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, and there's so many parameters that can affect that experience too, and it's such a wild west of experiences in a way. I mean, sound baths, which is what I call what I offer, and a lot of people call that, I guess, is if that's what you mean by class.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sort of like there's I mean, each person has such a unique experience and responsibility. The teachers have a responsibility to kind of really give their experience, and you're going to feel a different feeling from any one particular person, and also on any particular day how you might be feeling. But yeah, essentially how I like to approach it is beginning with a brief meditation where we just kind of sink into the body. Um, Start kind of tuning in, breathing, grounding in, and then and it's changed a little bit since I've switched to virtual over the
Mm.
last year, and it's been exclusively that lately. But if it's in person, I guess it's the same either way. But yeah, like, and then encouraging people to basically pick a comfortable place, so whether they're lying down or seated, and it's essentially like a extended meditation where you're really like really encouraged to let go of any story that of the day, of any anything coming and going, and just sort of dropping in and allowing your body to receive, and beginning with a meditation of kind of opening up our attention to kind of the world around us, the soundscape, and just sort of allowing it to be the canvas on which the experience happens. And it's pretty amazing where you can get people to relax pretty quickly with even just that. But then once the tones start being emitted from instruments, people can drop in and have really their bodies will just tell them what they need a lot of the time. So like I find that a lot of people fall asleep very quickly, and they don't even realize they're slipping into sleep, but they needed it so bad, or like they get, emotions can kind of get churned up, so there's like it can have a lot of different effects. So that, different instruments I have are like the shruti box, which is like kind of more of a kind of classic, like our harmonium, which is a nice kind of calming fifth interval, perfect fifth. At least that's what I have it set to. There's tuning forks, and these can kind of like clear the air, or they can also be played a little bit differently and like right up to your like ears, and kind of like if it's in a perfect fifth, which is a really healing interval, that can be really relaxing. So kind of playing with all these different instruments. This is a gong behind me. It
Beautiful.
has like a towel on it right now. It looks like it just got done from the spa. Uh, but yeah, the gong is probably the most powerful, I'd say, in a lot of ways, because it has every frequency in it. So like, whereas like tuning forks are very specific, they're one tone, and they're like really they're like this kind of almost more surgical method of just like precise tones, which certain intervals can have certain reactions with people, and also like our certain organs react differently to certain tones, which is really interesting and deep. And I think
Mhm.
each person's different with that. So whereas those are really precise, the gong is more of like an ocean wave, just like of sound, and you can literally feel it. It's like really deep bass, vibrating your body to like shimmering, almost like kind of stormy, metallic ocean sounds essentially. And it's like the whole spectrum of frequencies are all the notes. So it's kind of a wash, and that can kind of move a lot of energy in our bodies, when it's literally physically kind of like rattling us. And so that some people have really kind of like averse reaction to the gong, in the sense of it can be kind of intense and kind of unearth tensions and anxieties, and kind of can be emotional or kind of tense, make people almost like wrestle with it. But it depends on the mood, and it depends on how it's played and all of that. um, and yeah, singing bowls are another really nice one. I've got a few here, um, which are kind
And
of
what are the singing bowls made out of?
these are made out of quartz.
Is it usually a quartz, or are there other materials that
Yeah, there's
channel through that energy?
those are crystal quartz, which I mean, crystal singing bowls are the ones that are made of quartz, and they're actually kind of they're less ancient and a little less kind of like reverend in terms of how they're made. They're actually, I think they're made from like this like molds of like computer chips, which is totally unspiritual. But they just sound really beautiful, and I think the tones just are really what have and they're easy to reproduce, and they're like less expensive and less uh, arduous to make than like Tibetan singing bowls, which are these kind of more ancient. They're actually made of 7 different metal alloys, which pertain to the seven chakras, and they're like hand pounded
Wow.
to resonate at certain frequencies, and everyone is unique, really. So kind of hear that. lot of different like harmonics, which is like there's a root note, but then there's like, and this is with every sound on earth, even our human voices and stuff. Like if you're singing one note, you're not singing ever really one frequency. You're singing an entire like cascade of harmonics above and below that tone that we're hearing. The primary tone or the tonic is like kind of what we associate with the sound that we're hearing, but there's so much more to it. So that whole harmonic series operates on a mathematical physical level that is mirrored across nature um, and existence all over the place. And it's pretty amazing when you start to dig into that stuff, just the overlap between math and physics and science and yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, medicine.
Are there any contraindications to not go to a sound bath? You know, I think at this time, people who are in pain or hurting are really reaching out to ton of different modalities. Um, and sometimes those modalities, if we don't really understand them, if we're not really connected to our bodies, so our bodies understand what's happening, sometimes there can be some contraindications. Is there any reason to really think about what class you might be going to, or what might be best for you, or anything like that?
It's a good question. I feel like in general, sound baths are or should be or ought to be pretty benign in terms of like they're really they're tones that are meant to soothe.
Mm-hmm.
So unless I would say maybe like if you're if a person is really sensitive to bass or potentially shrill sounds, I know the gong is probably the most challenging, I'd say. So not everyone gels with the gong, but I still think it's yeah, I think it's a really healing thing for the most part. But I feel like if you have an aversion to or real sensitivity to sound, or if you have hearing aids, I would say that's probably a reason where that this certain sounds might really be shrill and harsh potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I'd just be careful with I guess sonic sensitivities. But that said, I feel like it can't possibly be as like it can't be more um, kind of like disorienting than like construction or it's like cars going by or like the cacophony of life itself is
Yeah.
pretty dissonant. So I feel like with a good safe setting and a good intention behind it, I feel like sound healing is among the more benign and safe modalities that you can experience. And there's all sorts of ways you can experience it remotely. And there are lots of recordings out there, and I have a few, and I do virtual sound baths from my Twitch account, where I like basically broadcast it from right here and send it out. And um, yeah,
I'll make sure in the show notes to link anyone who's interested in listening to Calvin, uh, his art, and sound for sure.
appreciate it.
Um, One thing that it's not that I struggle with this, but I'm really starting to think about it more now than ever um, is being, in this modern American world, since this is where we live, and channeling something so ancient, something so deep, and something so not from me. Um, Although I've opened up to it and work with Ayurvedic medicine and work with this ancient material, and I've really had to come to this space of honoring what it is I'm doing, um, n- noting what it is that I might not be passing on, and just really coming to a space of sharing and helping and guiding, um, from a space of who I am, of who I am, and where I am in this world, and how I got here. How do you um, do that? How do you work through channeling or being someone bringing in something so ancient into this modern world?
Good question. I feel like vibration is universal, and it's ancient, but it's modern, but it's all of the things, and it's always all the time. And I love to just think of starting with the human voice, and our own inner sound bath, if you will, just like encouraging people to practice humming and toning and feeling their own vibrational quality, because everyone has a unique vibrational quality and makeup. And so I always encourage, when doing sound baths, to really tune into one's specific experience, one's specific body, one's specific, yeah, just experience, and encouraging people to tone along with tones that I might be emitting as well, so that people can kind of like vibrationally muscle memory understand what's like, because I do feel like as a culture we have a real suppression of our vocals, essentially, or just like we kind of like associate our voices as being like not good if we can't sing like someone on The Voice or something like that. So I really like to encourage people, like anyone can sing, and everyone should sing, however, like with no judgment, and just like any vibrational kind of like ability to kind of tune into that ancient knowing, that vibrate, we are an instrument. And there's an amazing teacher, Sylvia Nakach, who I've taken a couple workshops with. She's incredible. Free Your Voice is her book, but she's all about this subject. um, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I feel like just really embracing what's happening right here and now, because I think while these things are associated with ancient traditions, these instruments do have a long, long history. I feel like when they're brought together with the intention that I like to bring, there's a sort of dropping into the very moment that we're in, the present moment, and that's all there really ever is. And so I feel like whatever experience that may be highlighting, that is all that this is all that there is. So I feel like sound is like one of the best ways to anchor into the present moment, and kind of drop story and just become uh, spirit and a body, and just feel,
Mm,
allow the experience to just be, and not have some label, or not have some kind of like, uh yeah, yeah, some story.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't answer exactly my question, but I do like where you went there, because I think that there's people who might not try sound healing because of the fact that it's ancient, and why do I need that? And that was a long time ago. And what does that even do for me? Um, and so just knowing, and this is along with Ayurvedic medicine as well, the fact that modern science is is holding new space where um, these things can be explained, like when we talked earlier about our cells at a very basic physiological level. Like sound is frequency, our cells move and connect and speak in frequency language. And so for anyone out there that hasn't tried this modality or experienced any sort of sound healing, um, drop into the now, drop into what we know now, and see if that changes your experience.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Just essentially, yeah. I mean, I think we have an association with these instruments as being ancient in this, and I think in a lot of ways that means it's tried and true and really been practiced and sustained
Mm-hmm.
for so long,
Yeah.
that it doesn't need to be relegated to the past and like, oh, that's just old news. I think there's actually a lot of there's just so much history to it that I think can really inform why it's stuck around for so long. And science is just proving it over and over and over again, that it's actually like extremely beneficial to our bodies and minds and hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And take the time. Take the time. Like you said, you are offering a class. Is there anything else you would like um, us to know?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm still I don't have a regular schedule as a sound healer. I mean, really I do sound design and mixing is like kind of like main profession these days, and it takes up a good amount of time. But with sound healing, I'm trying to do like every full moon, do a sound bath broadcast. But I'm still kind of dialing in how often that happens. But yeah, essentially just stay tuned with me on my website. It's calvinpia.com. You can link it up.
Yeah.
My Instagram, and I post about things usually a little bit in advance. I'll just say, hey, I'm doing a sound bath. Like, come check it out. And it's pretty often free or donation based. I do private ones as well. If you're in the Portland area, that sounds like the world's opening up a bit. So I'd be into doing that in person as well. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, what a gentle and lovely way to step into this healing modality.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing your time. You can listen to this and more at greentreeayurveda.com, and I will talk to you soon.